And now a mellow tutorial for Texas Hold'em. The game of Texas Hold'em, playable by 2 to 10 players. In this example, played by 6 big fans of Indiana Jones. In a Texas Hold'em tournament, each player gets an equal amount of chips. Play order is determined by position, starting with the dealer position. This happy fellow, marked with the D, will be the dealer. During the game, the dealer position rotates around the table to the left, each person getting an opportunity to be the dealer for a different hand. To the left of the dealer is the small blind position, the first of 2 that are required to make bets before any cards are dealt. The next position to the left is the big blind. They put in twice as much as the small blind. Each player is dealt 2 cards, starting from the small blind position, around the table. The person to the left of the big blind is UTG, or under the gun. They're the next to act. They have a number of options now. They could fold, opting not to play. They could raise, putting more money in, or they could just call the same amount as the big blind. In our example, the UTG calls, the next player folds, their hands go off to the side in what's called the muck. The muck is where all cards that are not in play are put. Player 6 also folds, and it comes back around to the dealer. Now, the dealer's decision is to call, in this case. The small blind's going to call as well. Now it comes around to the big blind, who has a number of options. He can check, not putting any more money into the pot, or he can raise, putting more money into the pot. He chooses to raise. Player 4, the original UTG, calls the raise, as does the dealer. Too much pressure for the small blind, who folds, and now we're ready to see some cards. As a randomizing factor, 1 card is dealt off the deck. It's called burning a card. Then the first 3 community cards are turned face up. This is called the flop. We'll now get a whole nother round of betting, starting with the first person to act, the new UTG, the big blind. In this case, the big blind chooses to check. Play moves now to player number 4, who also checks. And it goes around to the only other person in the game, the dealer. And the dealer's going to bet $10. Now the big blind has to make another decision. He chooses to call. And player 4 has to decide as well. He also chooses to call. A second card is burned in preparation for the 4th community card, which is called the turn, or 4th Street. Once more, there's another round of betting, starting with the first player, in earliest position, the big blind. He chooses to check. Then it is player 4's turn. He also checks. It goes back around to the dealer, who this time checks. Another card is burned, and it's time for the 5th and final community card, 5th Street, or more commonly called the River. These are all the community cards we're going to see. Now there's one final round of betting. The big blind checks, goes around to player number 4, who also checks, and then back around to the dealer. The dealer position is commonly thought of as the strongest because he gets to act last. The last player to act gets the most information. In this case, the dealer makes a big bet, goes back around to the big blind, who moves all in with a raise. Remember that he checked initially, but because the dealer bet, that gives the big blind all his normal options. He can call, fold, or raise. And this time he pushes all his chips in the middle, thinking he's got everyone beat. Player number 4 folds his cards. You can also say he mucked his cards. Player number 1 makes the call. That was the last round of betting, and there are still 2 players left in the game. After all the bets are in, and the players have to show their cards, this is called the showdown. Let's take a look and see how they did. Player number 1 has a full house. He started off with a set, wound up with a full house by the end. Unfortunately, player number 3 has a bigger full house with jacks and aces. This means player number 3 won the hand and a huge pot, putting him in the chip lead. That unfortunately makes player number 1 a loser.